look outside of your industry into other industries in order to figure out how you can borrow innovations, and think about as well where you think you have necessary cost centers, how can you turn them into profit centers? When you're in the phase of, is it the offer, is it the audience, and is it the messaging problem, just tough it out. It's as difficult as it is. I mean, there's, you know, how hard it is to go 70 calls without a deal. And I mean, I've done in certain offers 100 calls with 5 deals. I mean, it's brutal. John has come on board recently, and what they've done is something that's unique. In they had an agency, they had a skill set, they had to find a certain type of client that wasn't always the easiest to find. It was relatively cost intensive to find those clients. And what John's been able to do is take something that would traditionally become a cost center in his business. He's turned it into a product, a coaching product. And by turning it into a coaching product, he has effectively turned this into now a profit center. And then there's a cascade of benefits that come out of it being a profit center. But I just think, like, I see what you did there, and it was really cool. And I wanted to kind of talk to anyone who is considering building a coaching program. You know, I've seen other people try stuff where maybe they need internal coaches, so they wanted to build a certification program to bring people into their coaching program as a team member. And I think you've done it like beautifully. And so I guess, what inspired the initial idea to build this program out in the first place?
Yeah, Mike, man, thanks for having me on. By the way, I just want to compliment you guys. It's just been incredible to work with you guys, you and your team. So I just want to give you some kudos right off the bat on that. It's been truly good operation you guys have going. So thanks for doing that. But to answer your question, man, so we're an agency. We're an agency. We've been around for about 5 years. We got started as a full service Amazon agency back in 2015. And one of the things that we found just during that process was this kind of small subset of what we do. And we've been really kind of niching down in terms of doing that more aggressively. It was very profitable for us. It allowed us to get to a deal a lot faster than what we were doing on the just overall agency side. And we knew that there was not a lot of people that were doing it in terms of this kind of smaller thing that we were doing for our clients on Amazon. And so I knew that that was a bit unique. And I was to a point of, after going through processes and workflows and just kind of working out the kinks in terms of what we're doing, what was the fastest way I could start working with more brands? And my background is in the finance world. And prior to me getting in e-commerce and being an Amazon seller and all that, I was at a company called Merrill Lynch. And, when you look at a lot of the ways that their business is set up, there are some things that are really great about it in terms of bringing on a team of people to go and actually acquire the clients, have the face and the relationship and own that whole client, have that client bring in assets, and Merrill Lynch be the one that's on the back end, or either wire services or financial firm handle things on the back end. And that was very intriguing to me in terms of how that was set up, that they could have just a tremendous amount of scalability, but something that required a very strong relationship. And that's why they have advisors. They understand that.
There's a couple cool things in the way that you're structuring that I really enjoy. One is taking stuff outside of the industry and bringing it in.
Yeah.
That's my favorite way to innovate. And I feel like most people just go around and copycat what everybody else is doing. But for you to go, what's Merrill Lynch doing that's working so well? And then how do I replicate that here? That's just another level that kind of accelerates you past what other people are doing that would be trying to compete with you. And so with the building of the coaching program, had you built a coaching program before, or is this your first time building one?
This was my second one.
So this is your second program. And then how did the first one go? Was it successful or mediocre, or what?
It was great, but we realized something. It's in terms of the scalability with that first program that we had. It was not. We had to have a very specific person. to really get someone in there and for me to feel good about their success in that program. And so it was a great content. We gathered a lot of great feedback, and we really learned a tremendous amount with that first program that we did. And we still work with those people that are in that program. But that was the one missing element to this, is that it had to be such a specific person that it was hard for me to scale it the way I wanted to scale it. But yeah, what I learned on that was pretty valuable for me.
So the first program, where did you scale it to?
We only really marketed that program for about 3 months or so. We had less than 50 people that were in that program,
which is still pretty good for only a few months of marketing. But and then so basically you got to this point where at the end of that you felt like, all right, this isn't scalable. I can't reach the audience at the size of audience I want to reach, and so let's kind of sunset this offer, serve everyone that we've got here, make sure that we deliver on our promises, but let's find whatever the next thing is.
Yeah. What's something that obviously when you think about, we're in the Amazon space, right? And when you think about, you almost can't, go on the internet right now and not see something about Amazon. And one of the things that my background is was an Amazon seller, and I didn't want to do any kind of Amazon seller, just be another Amazon selling program. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but I wanted to do something a little bit different than that. But what was something, that was another thing that got me back into doing this as a training offer, is I felt like there's a lot of people that have been through an Amazon training program, have maybe not had, that's selling products actually, but have not had the success maybe they wanted to have, but still are saying, what can I do to ride the wave of Amazon? And I felt like this would be something that had more of a mass consumer appeal, but still allowed someone to work within the Amazon ecosystem.
Okay, so you guys launched it, you started testing it, and I thought there's something that you guys are doing that's unique that I wanted to mention, which was you guys have inverted part of your system. I know you were running your system a certain type of way, and then you inverted it, and you noticed that it started working better for you. Can you talk about that or share that a little bit?
Yeah, that's something that I think is a little bit different, and it worked for us. Certainly, I can't speak for everybody else. It'll work for everybody else, but something that we do that I think is certainly unique is there's something that we call the inverted sale. And Mike, what started happening was, and this is funny about this particular offer, is I was not met when it was just myself and my business partner taking these calls. We were not doing very well. I think we took like 70, 80 calls before we had a sell. And that was much different than my previous training program that said, it was like my first call I had, I sold them, and I knew really right away that if I was talking to the right person, it could go well with that first offer. But in this one here, I did not have initial success with it. And I changed up how the strategy session would go. And one of the biggest changes I made was moving the information about the pricing of our program and the training to the very front. What started happening was, what I noticed that was happening on those calls when we were doing those 70 calls and not selling someone, was even when we had someone that was ready to go, for whatever reason, maybe it was some other elements, but it was just something that that resonated with me, or was very apparent, was that they get to the end and I would tell them the price, and some of them were so just devastated at that time that they couldn't get going, and it was just not a feasible thing for them to pay the cost of the training. And there's a couple things that that were happening with that, Mike. It was that, first off, I really felt a bit of felt bad for them, that I'd almost teased them with something this entire time, this hour, this 45 minutes, when, and by the way, during this time, they did not know what the pricing was. And I was putting this kind of offer to them on a silver platter and then letting them down at the end. But then also I felt like I wasted my time,
Yep.
I've invested my time in there, and, if they don't have the money, they don't have the money, right? If they don't have the financial resources and they can't do it, then they just can't. And so what's a way for me to do that sooner and get to that point? And I started experimenting with that. And then I found out a couple things happen, Mike, is that we have a rapport building time at the beginning of the call, just maybe a couple minutes. And I have just something I simply say to them about this inverted sale portion, and say, hey, here's what this training is all about. It's going to include this, this, and this. And by the way, the cost of that training is this. And I'll simply say, and then at the end of that, I'll say, gosh, what's the exact wording? The exact wording is, if that's okay with you, is that something that you feel that you'd be able to participate in at the end of our call, Mike? And so they'll give me a response. And after that, there's another key question that I ask. And that question is, with that being said, Mike, does it make sense for us to continue our call? I get all that out in about the first 5 minutes. And there's something that happens when both of those questions there. Now they know what that investment is right then at that time, but now they're still invested even further. They've seen the VSL, they've jumped through the hoops of my my application form, my survey form. And I've got a lot of hoops that they have to jump through for that. And now they've kind of got on, they've heard a little bit more about it. And then now they've heard the pricing. But then that second part, that second piece, where we actually ask, does it make sense for us to continue the call? That's their out. They have an out of, hey, this doesn't make sense. And that's a year's worth of income for me. I can never come up with that amount of money. Well, I've saved my time for doing the call, and I can also really understand if they don't have it, and I can answer a couple questions for them, but it saves me for 45 minutes of going through our actual strategy session.
Yeah,
but
and it saves them being let down, which you described earlier, which is really important for the customer experience.
Exactly, right? There's something that happens there, right? So that second piece there of actually saying that, yes, and having them commit to yes, let's continue the call. There's a psychological trigger there, I think, that happens with that the person that we're talking to, that they've already given a soft commitment that pricing is no longer a reason for me not to continue forward.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it gets that curiosity is settled, but then they still have, it yields all these additional questions being, well, what's this include and how's it work? And what do I have to do in order to do that? And what can I expect to get from it? And so you alleviate that big question, but then there's still enough curiosity that holds like the frame and guides the call moving forward from there.
And I believe that they're able to have a bit greater clarity. They're able to listen to the rest of that call better without that kind of sore thumb or that glowing sore thumb of how much this is going to cost me, how much this is going to cost me throughout the entire call.
Interesting, because some of the things that you guys have done, I want to highlight for anyone watching this, because this is super, super important stuff. So you had both you and Rick taking calls, yes, right? And so just for anyone watching this, Rick is someone who works with John. He's part of John's team, and like both of them decided to take calls. You guys took a lot of calls. You guys took a lot of calls and didn't make any sales for a while. And then yes, you still figured, I got to figure this out, right? Which a lot of the people that come to us think, oh, I just need to get someone who's good at selling. When in your guys' case, it wasn't the salesperson, it was the sales process. You fixed the process, and then the outcome started changing. And then I think, that's always one of the most frustrating moments when you're in that spot, because you don't know if it's the audience, if it's the offer, or if it's your messaging and presentation.
Right.
Or sometimes even you, people think, is it me that's, am I not closing? And so it's so difficult in those early phases to tough through that many calls. But once you do, it's super worth it, because since you guys brought on the sales reps, you've had everything flushed out. You've had the offer, you've had the conversations, you had the calls recorded, you had everything that you needed to have in place. So then when we plugged in the sales reps, your team just comes out so strong. And instead of trying to shortcut that and get a sales rep early without having figured that out, and then it would have just been abysmal.
Yeah, I don't see how you could do it. I really don't see how you could do it without, if we'd have just said, hey, here's our first, thinking back to where we started with, before I changed the offer up, the only way I was able to change that, our strategy session, is me being on that call and really like, Mike, I won't get too far into this, but it was a particular call I had with one lady. I was spoken for like 2 hours, and I didn't close her. This was when I was still in this, like, we weren't closing anyone. And I was still kind of like you're saying, Mike, like, why is this not happening? Like, we were generating all the interest. We were getting our days packed with calls, but for whatever reason, no one was closing, right? Even people that are excited. Yeah, sounds cool. I'll think about it. And I'm like, what is going on? And so there was a particular call I had with one lady, and it was like a 2-hour call. And I appreciated her because she was so, I guess, vocal in terms of what her issues were. And I'd say it was that single call that after that, I was like, all right, Rick, I called him. I was like, here's what we're doing. This is how we have to change this whole thing. And it was from that conversation I had with her that made me see what the blocks were. I think that everybody else was not able to articulate like she was able to, and get me to understand her angle better. And so without me being on that call, without me being able to have that conversation with her and kind of that, this is the problem, I think it'd be super, super hard trying to decipher that by what a sales team is telling you.
And the other thing that I find interesting, right, is like, and maybe this, you hadn't considered this, but I always think this is a kind of fascinating thing. It's like the math of your time already on the sales calls, you're producing so much revenue per hour on a sales call. It's like, why don't you just continue producing that amount of revenue on the sales call and then allow us to do the recruiting? Because if you were to do the recruiting, you're not going to produce any revenue, and the opportunity cost on the time there is so high, so that's another thing that I'm always thinking about, like why, and sometimes I don't even understand why people think like, oh, it's like if you're closing 20% of your calls at a $3K price point, your dollar per hour is so high that it's like, just take 5 calls a day and then you don't have to do 5 interviews a day,
I think that's easy to say, but the thing that I think the thing that's easily missed in that, Mike, is that it's great if, hey, John can close 50% of people, right? Or it's great if Mark can close. He's, Mike's the CEO that's doing this, can close this. But that's not necessarily where I'm trying to get to. If I can get a system in place, that I can bring in this person, this person, this person, this person, this person, that can also consistently close at 30%. Those are 2 entirely different things.
Totally. Yep. That makes sense. So now that you've brought on the reps, how many reps are currently on your team, and kind of what all is happening there?
Yeah, so you guys got us going with the 4. You actually brought us 5. You kind of had 4 plus an extra, but we wanted to move forward with 4 of those. There's sometimes an expectation of how many are going to work out of those 4. But I'll tell you, man, we've had just a tremendous amount of success. And I'm going to give you guys a lot of credit to that as well, of putting those 4 that you sent over to us. Had already had a very strong understanding, a very strong sales experience already. But each one of those 4 are doing great. Even the ones that or the one that particularly that's on our team that was not hitting the same highest, there's now been a very big uptick. And I think a lot of that has been credited to is each of the 4 are working as a team, almost as if they've been working together as a sales team for years.
Now, so just in terms of the kind of snapshot of before and after, what has been the revenue growth in the process of bringing in the team?
Yeah, man, I wish I had the exact numbers. Certainly would not be hesitant to share them with you, but we're still a fairly newer offer for us. So we haven't been live on our offer for that long. We were Rick and I were the ones that were taking those calls. I believe that we are at maybe 20 or so that were in the program before we got going. We're now at just over 70. We might have been closer to mid 20, but we're now over 70 since the team got going. And so that's been about 3 weeks. So yeah, man, I mean, complete hockey stick of growth.
That's crazy. Yeah. And part of why I want to ask that is it's so cool. Like a lot of people don't fully understand the quantum leap that occurs when the right reps get on board, and then you can come off. And now that you're able to come off, it's like you're able to do so much bigger stuff. And I'm sure your marketing team's panicking a little bit because you got 4 awesome reps, and it's like, crap, we got to fill these guys' calendars.
We got to keep them busy.
Exactly. And so the other question is, now that you're off the calls, where's your time and attention going?
It's further down, so if you think about where we are in terms of our offer, I'm just now been able to shift my focus to a different area of our product. And so, as you know, that we are bringing people in, as we talked about earlier, we're doing their sales, and then that is to get them to sell our primary agency product, which is a product called ChargeGuard. So there's some things along that sales funnel and sales process that I want to improve. And so now I'm able to take the people that we're putting into the program, make that sales process more efficient, more effective for those guys that are going through there. So we've changed some things to hopefully make their life easier once they're in the program.
Cool. You want a little tip?
Absolutely, man.
Shirts. It's crazy, dude. It's crazy. Shirts.
That's the thing.
Yeah, it works. It works like a charm. Once you get shirts and people start getting their shirts, and then other people they start to set the goal to get the shirt, and the momentum just starts to go crazy, as well as rankings. So a couple things that we've been playing with is, so the people who hit 100K a month as a sales rep get a shirt. And then once people start to see other people get shirts, it's like, oh, okay, this is possible. And then they set their targets and they hit it. And it's just like, it's an identity level thing, right? So on the identity level, it really impacts them. And then it starts to build the culture of the whole internal group. And then the other thing that we see is when we're posting the rankings, then you get this little bit of a friendly competition out. And people start one-upping each other, and then it just starts to have this like 4-minute mile effect, where inside of our system, like since we've started posting rankings, people have started to just do numbers that like I didn't even think were possible before.
That's absolutely awesome, man. It's so funny. Sometimes the simplest thing as a shirt can be this big motivator for people.
It's so stupid. Yeah, but it's great.
Yeah, but it works, right? If it works, it works. No, man, I think that's a great thing that we can implement. And that's particularly for, the guys that are coming into the program. And as you're saying there, these guys are making their outreaches to deliver, the brands and the whales that we're trying to get. And so, man, that's a great idea, the ranking. That's not something I'd really thought about. But one small thing, you talk about the certification. That's been working like wonders in terms of just a motivator. So at the end of the training, we actually have them take a test and they get a certification for our program, which is now they're a certified recovery specialist. And that was like a small thing, to be honest with you, Mike, that we kind of threw in at like the end, but that one thing of getting that, like they're super motivated, they're in the program, they share the certification that they get. And it's this, as you're saying, this motivating factor. And once one person posts that certification of completing the training, it just spikes everybody else. And I'm going to get mine done and get mine completed. So I think the next piece of that would be the rankings of the outreaches that they're making as well.
So if someone were to want to find you guys, how do they find you on the internet and what you guys are doing to learn more about it?
Yeah, so our primary site it's Recovery Rush. So Recovery Rush, and it's all about cost recovery. And that is our niche, right? There's a lot of brands that are doing exceptionally well on the Amazon platform right now in terms of millions of dollars in sales. But the other side of that many people are not aware of until they're doing that and interacting with Amazon is that there's a lot of cost involved, right? So you go in thinking that you're going to have X number of profitability, call it 30% ROI or profitability, and then Amazon says, hey, Mike, you forgot about these extra charges and shortages and chargebacks here. So instead of 30% profitability, you're actually at a 10% or a 15% profitability. And the thing that most of those brands don't know is that we can work with them to get those fees put back into their account. And so that's what we do. We show those guys how to work with us and partner with those brands and get a percentage of the money that they recover for those erroneous fees that Amazon's charging. But cool. Yeah, you can find me at recoveryrush.com.
And then as well, I think that there is some really interesting insights and just that there's always a problem and leveling up your problems. And once you solve one bottleneck, like what you did, the bottleneck rapidly moved into sales and you guys are like, holy crap, I got to get off the phones. And then you solve that. And now you're like, holy crap, I got to work on filling up these calendars, and Facebook just jammed us up a little bit. So there's always going to be that problem, and it's leveling up your problems through the process of scaling.
That's it, man. That's it. And Mike, dude, I feel like you were right there with me as I was putting all this together. I think that you've done a really good job finding those little nuances about our offer that I think makes it work. So nice job, man.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And thank you for taking the time. Anyone who wants to go find you, they'll find you over at recoveryrush.com, right?
Yep, recoveryrush.com.
So go ahead and check them out at recoveryrush.com. And I appreciate you taking the time this week to break down your journey.
Love it, man. Thanks a lot. Appreciate all that you and your team have done. It truly is great. Been working with a lot of different agencies, and man, you guys have impressed and went further than I anticipated. So nice job, man. Tell the team.
That's the best. Thank you. That's it for this week's interview. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did enjoy this interview, we do one like it every single week inside of our free Facebook group called 7-Figure Agency Owners and High Ticket Coaches. So if you're an agency owner, coach, service provider, and you're really wanting to scale to 7 figures and beyond, join us inside the group. It's coachingsales.com/group. Again, coachingsales.com/group. See you on the inside.